Business and Financial Raw Talk, a no-holds-barred forum for leaders and innovators with award-winning business strategist and financial analyst LaWanna Bradford with the Bradford Group. With Raw Talk, we are empowering women to rise and succeed in business and finances, and improve the world for the next generation. Get ready to get raw and real. Live each Tuesday at 6 p.m. Eastern on e360tv.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Business and Financial Raw Talk. I am LaWanna Bradford. To our E360 TV community, thank you for continuing to watch us every single weekday on Tuesdays at 6 p.m. And to those who are viewing us on LinkedIn and Facebook, welcome. The one thing that I love about Business and Financial Raw Talk, the show is designed not to have just the basic conversations about business, right? We can Google that. But this is really to bring those thought leaders in to kind of challenge some of the norms as it relates to business and finances, and especially how we think about business and finance and how we show up in the world of business and finance. And I'm excited because today I have an amazing individual who classifies herself as a dualpreneur, and we'll get into what that means a little bit later. And that is none other than Dr. Elizabeth A. Carter. Dr. Elizabeth Carter is the CEO of A.A.P.P.E.A.L. It stands for Absolute Passion for Performance, Engagement, Analytics, and Leadership. See, during her journey, she realized that women's voices were not heard, minority voices were not heard, and these two groups were not really represented at the table as they should. So based upon her background and experience within the corporate and executive ranks, she founded this company in order to help empower and fuel these two groups in a way so that they can show up, to be seen, to be heard, and to make a difference. She is currently the VP of Clinical Services, Business Operations for a health insurance company, excuse me. She is a speaker, she's a trainer, she's a coach, she's an influencer, and she's a multi-winning best-selling author. So without further ado, welcome, Dr. Elizabeth.
Hello, I am so happy to be here to have this conversation. Thank you so much for having me, LaWanna.
Thank you for saying yes. I know you are a busy, busy woman. And today, I love this conversation, the 9-to-5 millionaire. And many of us who are entrepreneurs have read the book, The Millionaire Next Door, but this is, you're taking it a little bit on a different lane, and you're challenging us to say, because some people, I'm going to put it out there, think the job, if you're in a job, if you're working for someone, then it kind of has a enslaved mentality, for lack of a better word, that you are allowing someone else to dictate what you do, when you do it, and how much you earn. But you have a different philosophy on how we can leverage that employment in order to build our future and even create generational wealth. So let's talk about this 9-to-5 millionaire principle.
Yes. So thank you so much for having me. I am, what you mentioned earlier, a dualpreneur. I still have a full-time, rigorous job in corporate America as a vice president, which is an executive level at my company. And at the same time, my own company, A.A.P.P.E.A.L, where I am looking to empower others with resources to climb the corporate ladder a whole lot faster than I did. And often we get frustrated because we're not getting the right feedback. We are doing everything above and beyond expectations and not being recognized. And we're trying to understand what is those couple of minor skills shifts, gap fillers, that we need in order to move successfully and at the rate that we expect. And being in corporate America can be very lucrative. Not everyone is built for entrepreneurship. There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of risk, especially getting started. And often it's our skill sets that we learn in our 9 to 5 jobs that enable us to make that shift into entrepreneurship, where we are a subject matter expert. We have the experience and are able to share what we've learned. And that's who I would want to work with and learn from. Someone who's been there, done that, has the bruises, and able to pour into me what they've done and learned so that I can go ahead and learn and move faster.
I love what you said, and you went over a few points, and I want to unpackage those a little bit. And the first thing, you're basically talking about that subject matter expert. So you're gaining the skill sets and the experiences in corporate. And should you choose to venture into the lanes of entrepreneurship, now you come with that proven expertise, right? You already have a track record. It's not like, okay, I'm starting this business from scratch, but I have no experience. All I have is perhaps education or some seminars that I've been to, but I really haven't had that deep dive muscle building experience that working in corporate gives you. And also, if you can talk a little bit about this, how corporate can be a resource to help you build authority, to have what you need to leverage in your own business that maybe you don't have currently the financial resources to go to a Harvard Business School, for example, or a leadership development class, or to pay a Salesforce marketing team to come on board and help you. So let's go into that.
Yes, absolutely. And that really is the essence of my company, A.A.P.P.E.A.L. So performance, engagement, analytics, and leadership. And those are 4 aspects that someone needs to learn and understand, regardless of where they are, working in corporate or even in their own company. Because we first have to understand what are our goals, and inside an organization, what is the company goals that they are striving to do, and how do you participate? And that's the engagement piece. How does what you do enable the performance of the business? Same as an entrepreneur, what are you doing every single day to ensure your longevity of your business and your legacy? And one thing business owners seem to fail at is in knowing the numbers. They are not quite clear on their metrics. They're not quite clear on their expenses. They may know how they are generating revenue, but from a profitability standpoint, you need to know, here's your incoming revenue, here's all of your outgoing expenses, and realistically, the intent is to have a profit. And you can learn that inside the organization that you're working for as you watch that similar flow of the company's finances. And you're learning, how does a company generate revenue? What are some of the various revenue streams that they use? How are they managing their expenses? What are some areas that they have cut back in, areas they are growing in? And similarly, it's always trying to grow in marketing, because we need to continue to advertise to get our consumers. We have to maximize our technology. And often we may need to delegate or look at how we handle our workforce. So again, understanding those tools in a corporate environment where there's a little less risk, but a lot of area to learn, is so helpful when you move out into the corporate, into the entrepreneur space. And then, of course, leadership. What are those aspects you need to know? 1, strategy, always. Emotional intelligence, time management, collaboration or teamwork, agile, being flexible. Those are the leadership skills that we learn and hone in on in a corporate environment. Again, absolutely leverageable into an entrepreneurial environment. So I call the corporate environment the sandbox. You get to learn, grow. As you hone in on what your secret sauce is, your expertise, you can then create that discipline and learn more. At the same time, you are elevating inside an organization based on the role you have. where you play, how innovative you are, your contribution. And that's always rewarded with annual salary increases, promotions. Depending on your company, there may be a supplemental bonus program and other ways in which we are rewarded for our work. And I always say that the corporate job can be we call it the secret investor or the silent investor to your business. Because as we mentioned earlier, when you start a business, you don't really know the inner workings. You have a passion, but you may not have the infrastructure, the systems, the tools, the resources, or the financial backing. You need to learn all that before you decide to make a full shift. And having a 9 to 5 corporate job is a great way to do that and learn. And also even leverage some of the skill sets you're learning inside your organization.
I love this. This is so rich. So we're going to, I know everyone's thinking, oh my gosh, she said so much. I'm trying to capture all these notes. Rewind. No worries. We've got you. So what I'm excited about is you talked about several things from a leadership standpoint. So let's sit there for a minute. Time management, emotional intelligence, collaboration, agility.
Yes.
And flexibility. And I want to talk about agility because the one thing that a strong leader knows is where they're going. They're very focused on that end goal.
Yes.
During the pandemic, we saw so many small businesses were devastated. And we saw that many entrepreneurs were, I like to call, doing the pivoting shuffle. Mm-hmm. And there are times when pivoting makes sense. But if you're very clear on where you're going, right, then that's where the agility and the flexibility comes into play. You're not changing direction, but it may be the modality that you're using to get there shifts. So if you could speak to the entrepreneur, especially that solopreneur that sometimes runs around with the CLS syndrome, Chicken Little syndrome, in a state of panic when shifts happen. But when you are able to master an agile mindset, I think you allay a lot of the frustrations and stress that you place on yourself, and you look for the successes that are out there and follow the clues that are laid before you. Can you speak to that, Dr. Elizabeth?
Sure. And back in 2016, when I was laid off from the current job I had due to downsizing, that was when I started my company, A.A.P.P.E.A.L. And it was exactly that moment that I said, all right, I'm going to go full force. I know I've got some great skill sets, don't have anything else, have no clients, no resources, no systems, no nothing. But I felt so strongly about my passion, I thought I could make it work, as many entrepreneurs do. But as I started my journey, I was finding that I knew a lot. I did not know a lot. And I found a coach. And she said to me, you know what? You may need to, which I did, go back into corporate where your strengths are to earn that salary to help you have money to learn. And it's not a bad thing. People feel as if they have to go back, and it's always temporary, go back to a full-time job. It's not that you failed your dream. It's just a matter of timing. And there is some more things that you need to learn. And by the way, you still need to feed your family and maintain your household. I see so many entrepreneurs would rather go bankrupt, live on the street, or move back home with their mama or grandmama than step back and put their ego to the side for a moment and go back and take on a regular job. But the challenge is go back with a purpose. Go back in with a role where you know you can leverage your time, your experience, and have a goal of what you're going to learn besides the financial money you'll receive. What else are you going to learn while you're there? And set a deadline. Say, hey, I'm going to do this for 3 years, get my debt back on track, learn these 4 or 5 things, do these 4 or 5 external components for my business, and then I'm ready to make the flip back. I think people don't have a game plan, and they let their ego make the best of them. without realizing that there's still some foundational things that may have been missing from their initial intent and timeline.
I like what you're saying, and let's talk a little bit about those that choose to go back, or are a dualpreneur. Because the one thing that when you are a dualpreneur, or if you were trying to figure out if I even want to go into the entrepreneur lane, that does not make you less than, it does not make you weaker as a professional, as an influencer. It's a life choice, right? And you have to weigh how risk adverse you may be to certain situations. Life happens. Women are finding themselves sandwiched between taking care of children and aging parents. You may be dealing with a health issue. Well, if you haven't paid attention to the market lately, if you're an entrepreneur and you're maxing your health insurance coverage, it's staggering for one person. So maybe you choose to go back because it takes off that headache, right? That concern. And like you said, you made a choice. You chose, I'm not going to live in my car. I'm not going to eat peanut butter and jelly every single day. I'm going to go back and have a strategy in order to maximize what I want to do in order to achieve my goal and my vision. And that's what you're doing with A.A.P.E.A.L. Let's talk a little bit about that.
So what I've been doing, and the fact with A.A.P.E.A.L is that because the struggle for women in corporate is still real, there is still a lack of role models, mentors, sponsors in corporate. It is still and is my goal to be that leader, that face, that person that I didn't have when I was coming up in corporate. So that's my goal for coming back and remaining in corporate. And because there's still a lot of changes in organizations. We are still living through some of the effects of the George Floyd tragedy. We know that diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging is a major strategy for many organizations. I love being able to be involved and be a voice to help drive those type of changes. And as I'm embedded in it real time, I can share that with my clients who come through my A.A.P.E.A.L program. It always bothers me when we're learning from someone, no offense to those of you who have left the business years ago, but to learn from someone who's not in the game today. The game 10 years ago, 20 years ago is different. Similar when I was in college, learning from professors who never worked in the industry. How can you teach me about a business? You went from school to school to school to teaching. So I am a person who lives it every single day. I can tell you that yesterday I cried. I can tell you last week someone came to me and wants to work with me. I can share information as I live it and as it changes the dynamic in corporate. So that's what I really am involved in when I've taken this most recent set of jobs I've had since I was laid off. But I am still clear about sharing my message through speaking, through my books, through my program.
Hold on right there, because you did a mic drop. In case you all missed it. I mean, when you did it, I was like, whoa. You're right. When you're in certain industries or any industry, and you are staying in tune with what is happening in that industry, then you can show up as that subject matter expert, as that authority, as that influencer, and you can pour into others. And so, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening and you are looking for a coach or have coaches around you, you might want to do a little deeper vetting and ask, how long have they been out of the game? Or even if they've left the game, are they readers? Are they still networking with leaders in the industry so that what they're translating to you is still relevant today? Because, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm going to toss the ball back to you, Dr. Elizabeth. If you are doing business the way you were doing it at the end of 2019, if your strategy has not changed, if your narrative hasn't changed, as she mentioned, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, if you are not leaning into how clients are looking at business and transacting in a different way, you're already obsolete. Dr. Elizabeth, take it away.
Yes. Thank you. That is so true. And again, in thinking about living and what's happening real time, people find that I find it relevant for myself, because as I stay inside and keep trying to challenge the status quo, the adversity, or sometimes even the embracement of that, is so helpful to others. I have many employees who are on my calendar for mentorship, and we just talk about what's happening, the here and the now. And I find that so refreshing that always people want to understand I'm not the only one. This is not only happening to me. This is something that is evident in many places. And how can we help solve it and have tools that will enable us to be able to quickly react to it, or even be proactive to it? And that is one of the key reasons why I really enjoy being in corporate. I know today's struggle will be someone else's lesson tomorrow. So that is what I love being able to do.
I love that. We're going to do a quick cutaway, and we'll be right back with the amazing Dr. Elizabeth Carter. Welcome back to the second half of Business and Financial Raw Talk. I am here with Dr. Elizabeth Carter, and we are talking about the 9-to-5 millionaire. We haven't gotten to that topic yet, but that's what the second half is going to be about. But before we go into that, I've already introduced you to her, but I want you to see her in action. Here we go.
Step out into new environments. And I know when people say, yeah, I've tried, it didn't work. Yeah, I saw somebody else do it, it didn't work. You have to be brave. I found that I was sitting in a seat called complacency. Everything felt good, salary felt good, loved my coworkers, but I needed to move beyond that. What's your why? What are you going to be doing differently? When you walk through that door anew, you want them to know who you are and what you stand for. I had let imposter syndrome, fear of failure, really kill my uniqueness of who Elizabeth Carter was. I had to reclaim that. Speak up, because we are judged before we open our mouths. So when we do, we want to make it good. I can find the strength to persevere and endure. I can find the strength to persevere and endure. Because I am a superhero. Thank you so much. You are a superhero. That is my time. I am Dr. Elizabeth Carter, elevation strategist. Yes,
When you sent me that, I'm like, yes, sign me up. It was so powerful, and there were so many messages that you were speaking to in that short clip. And the one thing that you said, and this doesn't matter if you're in the corporate lane or you're an entrepreneur, and this month, ladies and gentlemen, is Black Business Owner Awareness Month. And Black businesses and businesses of color have different struggles simply because of the systems that we have to operate in. And you said in that clip, and that was one thing that really jumped out at me, you said, we are judged before we even open our mouths. So let's talk about that, and how can people show up in their truth, in their authentic selves, boldly and unapologetically, when you know that you're trying to navigate these systems of limitations.
Yes, thank you so much for that. Yes, I have found that is the biggest challenge for people, and that actually shuts us down. We know that no matter what we say, whether we have great intentions, that it will be perceived sometimes differently than we had expected. And I have a little moniker around that, which says you have to speak and be profound. And profound stands for positively reflects our finest observations, uniqueness, intelligence, and determination. Now, we don't need to speak to hear our own voices. We know what it sounds like. We have to be very deliberate and strategic in what we say and how we say it. We need to be like back in the day, E.F. Hutton. When E.F. Hutton speaks, everybody listens. That is what we have to strive to be. Because we know that sometimes there is already people not wanting to hear what we have to say, not understanding the value that we bring, not understanding why we're even at the table or in the room or in the meeting. That is why we have to really think about, and first of all, recognize we do belong. That's the first part. We do belong, and be confident about it. I was just reading an article today about how do you handle being the only, and that could be the only of anything. We have to make sure and know in our hearts of hearts, and it's a mindset to start. And that's part of my framework. First piece is understanding the setup or your mindset. Because if you feel defeated, unworthy, uncertain, it shows in your body language, in your mannerism, and people will feed off of that in the wrong way. So when we come in verbally, vocally, on a Zoom, in person, we need to have confidence. We might be scared on the inside, but when we talk with confidence, with passion, in our lane of brilliance, that is where we shine. Now, the other piece of that is always about tone. People have a thing about voice and tone and texture. We also have this notion of sounding either too aggressive or too nice. That also comes through in how we talk. We also have to think about talking in a way that is not combative, but to learn and understand. That's also a dynamic because we always want to have our voices heard to show our brilliance, but never to undermine the others in the room who are similarly brilliant in their own way.
I want to ask you, yes, I'd like to, ask you one question about what you just said as far as being cognizant, of tone. And one of the things that many people in communities of color are accused of is you're aggressive, right? And it's like there's a difference between aggressive and passion. You mentioned the George Floyd incident. And the one thing that I am trying to create conversations around diverse communities of different complexions is to let people understand that as we journey through life, there are generational pains that are carried through that we cannot dismiss. It is not that we're saying we are blaming certain people today for what was built 200, 304 years or 400 years ago. However, just as certain groups have been the benefactors of the system, others of us have been crippled and held back. And I believe, this is just LaWanna's view of the world, when we are in positions where we can influence, where we can inform and educate and create advocates and allies, it's our responsibility to do so. And I'm just curious, since we are in Black Business Owner Awareness Month, what do you have to say about that particular topic around diversity and equity and inclusion and belonging?
Yes, I think that there's still a lot more that needs to be done. And I feel as if we're backsliding a bit. I think that generationally, I am finding that our up and coming generations are a lot more vocal about what they want, what they deserve. And I I applaud them. The challenge is that those who are still in leadership are those other generations that are still carrying all that hurt and thinking that there is entitlement or lack thereof. So it's really going to be a matter of time. And that's why folks like me who were trying to create a legacy of change, we won't see vast improvements until I am well gone. But I am making sure I'm planting the seeds and embedding these other generations of leaders, especially, to continue to push the button, speak up. One story I love to tell is that back in the day when I was in corporate, all of the major programming and all the major contracts happened on the golf course. I didn't play golf. And said to my leader, hey, I'm missing out on a bunch of great contracts. I was in sales at the time. He told me, go learn golf. Now, today, that would not be the response. And I am applauding those who now challenge that to say, I'm going to play golf because I want to learn golf, not because my career is dependent on it. And let's have meetings in spaces where we all feel comfortable, such as a restaurant or a boardroom or wherever else in the office. So I love that we'll challenge the status quo. We will say what happened back in the day, we will not have happen again. And let's create new norms. So I'm excited about where we're going. I feel as if some ways we've had to backtrack, but we've got enough strength and power in our other generations to really carry it further and faster than we will be able to.
Yeah, I love the golf example. My dad was an avid golfer, and my brother and I also played, but we were told you will play, you will learn the game for the very reason you said. The very reason you said. And I'm horrible at it.
Me too. Nice to get out there.
Right. It's not really what I want to do, but I'm like, okay, Dad said. And I do like that. It's now the younger generation, they are being vocal, and I think they are more aware, self-aware than we were.
Yes.
And they are less tolerant.
Yes.
Right. And I think that is so great that no matter what the complexion, they are very vocal, and we don't want to strip them of their voice. But there can be a strong partnership between the old guard, right, and the new, as we're passing that baton, because we have learned experiences that can help them, as you mentioned, go farther, faster.
Yes.
We can help them to navigate those minefields.
Yes.
Now,
yes.
I want to talk about, because you and I spoke in length about this very topic, about the 9-to-5 millionaire. And many people believe that if you are not at the upper echelons in corporate, to reach millionaire status is really impossible. The only way to do it is to develop these multiple streams outside of corporate. And you're here to say, well, yeah, you can go that way, but I'm an example that you can be a 9-to-5 millionaire. So if you could give our listening audience some tips on what they can do, no matter where they may stand in their professional career, in order to secure their financial future.
Right. Absolutely. And it really is always in investing. And secondly, always managing your expenses. What I learned early on was, especially when I was working in sales and wasn't making any sales, I did have to, again, ego had to step in. I had to go back and move in with my mother and regroup my career prior to moving into working in finance. And what I learned was that sometimes you have to be humble, go back to the beginning, and start to build your wealth. I always invested in the 401k plan with my job, and people tend to only want to contribute whatever the company is going to max. If they're only giving you 3%, I'm only going to put in 3%. But you need to invest more than that. And because it comes out before it hits your paycheck, you don't miss what you never had. So I always invested beyond the company match, but always took the company match, always. And every year when I got my increase, that incremental went also into my 401k. And over time, I would continually increase my contribution. Now, of course, moving up in the ranks, you have other components of your compensation. There's probably a bonus program. I worked for one company that also had this 3-year long-term incentive plan, which also gave me stock options. But I always made sure I had extra money to be able to invest on my own. I found that using my tax return, instead of buying something I really didn't need, I always did 2 things with my tax return. One, invested in some annuities and put some down on the principal on my mortgage, because real estate is the other way in which you accumulate wealth. You don't want to be debt poor in a beautiful home where when you sell, you're upside down. You want to be able to walk away with equity in your house to use that to buy the next house. I also found that when I left the company, I took my money with me, and I have an advisor who I say to him, here's my 401k bucket. Let's put it in something that's, a little less risky for my retirement, and let that just sit there and let it build. So I have several of those types of funds based on the various companies I work for. In addition to me taking my little tax returns, and again, that grows as your income grows, and investing that into different types of annuities. Then minimizing my debt. My dad always told us, as pertaining to buying a car, if you can't put down half, then you don't need that car. And I live by that, to say, I don't need to be driving something where my car payment is more than my mortgage. No way. And I always make sure I have enough to pay it off early, so that I'm not carrying this car note forever. That, and being in the working environment for almost 30 years, I have been able to accumulate wealth. And the only debt I really have is my home and credit cards. I pay off everything every single month. Another thing, because you're saving on the interest rates. So again, watching what you spend on your credit cards. And I will tell you, you may have family who want you to give them a credit card or put them on your credit card account. Don't do that. That happened to me, and they defaulted, and it was my credit got ruined. Another piece of advice, because we tend to want to help family, don't help them in that way. Just letting you know from personal experience.
Yeah, I think many of us have been there. We want to help, right? But there are other ways to do so, and that comes from just these amazing tips you just gave. Giving education, showing them how can you prepare yourself so that you can apply and get your own credit card. But then once you get it, how do you best manage it? Mm-hmm. Right?
Yes.
And I love what you said about, building equity in your home and in your real estate, and being in the mortgage industry. I'm surprised to find how many individuals who are senior, right, who have already retired, and they still have a huge mortgage debt. And you wonder, okay, you've been in this home for 40 plus years. How do you still have a mortgage? Because they were just refinancing. And then when they pass away, they don't have anything to leave behind because they're in debt.
That's right. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. I love these. I love these tips. I just want to put them up again in case anyone missed them. So Dr. Elizabeth is saying, if you're incorporated, invest in your corporate company's plan, maximize beyond the company's match, invest a percentage of your annual increase over time, increase those contributions, building equity, it should be equity in other funds, investing your tax returns, minimizing your debt, and building equity in real estate. And I'd like you to talk a little bit to the entrepreneur, because it does take money in business, and sometimes you are getting a business loan. Mm-hmm. You may have been able to do a crowdfunding or bootstrapping. You may have even harvested equity out of your home in order to build business. Mm-hmm. But because of what you know about finances, what do you want to say to that person who may have done just that? pulled out of their home to build their
You
business.
definitely, yeah, you definitely want a strategy to know how you were going to pay it back. And I think people underestimate the payback piece. And that we think that going into entrepreneurship is going to be, I'm going to be on the beach every day, taking it easy, but it's a lot of work. And again, that's why some people are not built for it. I find that being an entrepreneur is somewhat of a 24/7 role for several years in the beginning, because you can't afford to pay staff. You are slowly but surely building up your client base. You're learning about the industry. You're going to events and conferences and outside, handing out flyers or whatever it is may be. There's a lot of work in the beginning, but you really have to make sure that you have a plan to grow your revenue, and at the same time minimizing your expenses so that you have money to chip away at that loan or whatever it is you did to finance it. Because, God forbid that your company doesn't do well and you have this debt hanging over your head, where now you may need to go to some other type of funding to pay off that funding. So again, you may have taken a mortgage on your house. Now you may need to go to your 401k or to maybe your life insurance if you had a whole life policy with cash benefits. So it always is, you don't want to borrow from Peter to pay Paul. You want to plan to pay Peter, and it may require you going above and beyond what you thought you needed to do. But once you get that paid off, and now you're seeing the fruits of your efforts, that is when it's golden. And then you can go ahead and take vacations on the beach and go to these elaborate places while your company runs all by itself for you.
I love that. The one thing before we close I'd like you to talk about is, on the corporate side, we have the opportunity for the company to pay for training and other growth opportunities. When we're on the entrepreneur side, it's up to us to do so. The one thing that you said was very important: when you're in corporate, lean into how budgets are done, right? How are they managing the budgets? Where are they cutting back? What are actually the expenses? And on the entrepreneur side, and I'm certain you've seen this, everybody's signing up for all these trainings, right? I mean, you feel good because you're busy. It feels good. I'm learning. I'm growing. You're not applying anything because you're training too much. But at the end of the day, if you actually did the math and see how much you've outlaid on training that may have been beneficial, may not, when are you factoring in the ROI? Because it's time and money investment. Dr. Elizabeth, what do you have to say to that?
Yes. So definitely. So first, around the training, people think that training is belongs to the company. Training belongs to you. I tell people the company will only invest a certain amount of money in you. And realistically, you need to also be investing your own money in yourself for programs that they may not feel are beneficial to them, but maybe beneficial to you personally. So I always say, don't rely on the company exclusively to train you. Take advantage. Use your own money. And they say about 20% of your salary should be for personal development. That could vary based on where you are in your journey of your career. But I always invest. I let the company invest in me where they feel appropriate, but then I also invest in myself. Now, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, yes, we sign up for everything. And I still do because I can. But what I say to people when we sign up for things is 3 things we're looking for, because the ROI may not be immediate. It's really about information and access. A lot of times the access is where the ROI comes in, because it's who's in the room with you. Who are you now networking with? Who do you now have access to, and who do they know? So for me, when I'm investing, I'm probably not going to get $1 million based on what they taught me today. Over time, I will learn what they've taught and embed it into what I do. But I stay attached to them because now they may be involved in a project with someone else that I need to know. So case in point, I've been working with Dr. Cheryl Wood, international speaker. She was attached to Les Brown. There was an opportunity that came up where she was attached to him, and he had an offering where you could get on his Facebook Live and have him write the foreword to your upcoming book. I took advantage of that, and my most recent book, Letters to My Corporate Sisters, Stories of Endurance, Elevation, and Encouragement, forward by Les Brown. So sometimes you are paying for all the time. You should be paying for not just information looking for the return today, but the future return and how much traction you will get from that. But don't waste your money on every single thing, because there's tons of things happening. I get emails all the time. I'm like, well, do I want to do that? Do I want to do that? It's only, and they say, well, it's only $19, but then it turns into $2,900, 29,000. So we want to be able to be conscious of what we're investing in, because there's always an upsell.
Yes.
So being conscious of that and knowing what the upsell is, are you ready? And similarly, what would be your ROI? And it may not necessarily be financial. It could be other aspects of your entrepreneur journey that you do need to keep your business moving.
I so agree. And being mindful to not get hooked in the upsell. It's all about timing and opportunity. So it may be a great opportunity, but not the right time. And there's two examples that I have. One of my business partners, she had gone through the year and was doing her taxes, but not paying attention to all the training she had paid for. And she had spent close to $12,000 in training, and her jaw dropped. And I said, okay, it's all right. If this was value added, it's okay. And I said, how much of that did you actually implement? She said, really not much. So that's the other thing is, as you said, you're looking at what type of information am I going to get? Am I going to apply it? And then the access. Sometimes it is worth getting making those connections. Recent example happened to me 2 months ago. I attended this online event, and I'm going to leave the speaker's name off of it. Major influencer on the world stage. It was a great free event. Well, the upsell was, for those of you who want to meet with me one-on-one and we'll get your questions answered, you could do so. So I paid my couple $100 so that after the session, we could have the private session with this individual. Well, we were supposed to have an hour of Q&A. This person spent 30 minutes basically recapping what they had already told us. And then at the last 30 minutes, where they only took a handful of questions, but each question they took, they weren't trying to get through all the questions. They were taking a long time. And so I put in the chat, I said, hello, I paid X amount. I have got a question. I only have one question. And I actually attended the event because I had one question. That's it. I just wanted one piece of information from this individual. I was told, oh, I'm sorry, but we're about to wrap up. She's got about 5 more minutes. However, at the main event, the in-person event, you'll get your question answered. So make sure you register for that. And I thought, I'm not going to register for that. I have one question. So you mean I'm going to register for an event, pay several hundreds of dollars,
more,
pay for an airplane ticket to get there, my room, my food, for one question? I'm like, you're big, but in the right time, it'll come back around, and the right person will be there to answer my question. So, so you have to be careful, because there are some bait and switchers out there.
Right. Yes. And
Well,
I find that the longer I'm in learning, the more I said, oh, but that helps me think about when I deliver certain programs and things, like, that's not what I want to be. So the great thing about being an entrepreneur is that everything you see, you can now make it your own. Where there may have been a program you were in, you're like, I would do that a little bit differently. Now you can, because you make it your own. And similarly, someone else's event would be like, I want to answer all the questions. I want to give you more. I want to deliver more to you. And that's the great part about being an entrepreneur. You're creating the experience that you want for others.
Exactly. Well, we are almost out of time. And Dr. Carter, I want to give you about 2 to 3 minutes to share any key nuggets that you want with the listening audience, and also let them know how they can contact you.
Wonderful. Well, I thank you so much for the time today talking about the 9 to 5 millionaire. Again, if you think about what you do, how you're saving your money, how you're making your money, where you are investing your money, you truly can be that. But I also applaud entrepreneurs who are similarly working to do the same thing. We are all working to create legacy for the next generation, leaving and creating generational wealth. So I applaud everyone to play in their lane of passion. I have a framework and I love my little phraseology of elevate your value. I love to advance people to the next tier in their life, whether they're in the corporate sector or the entrepreneur sector. As we talked early on, the tools and the skill sets are the same. What I love to be able to do is empower individuals to really get over the fact that they may be unclear, unsure, deflated ego about what they've been doing forever. My story is I was killing myself working in corporate, and my reward was being laid off. And that was so demoralizing to me because we knew growing up, hard work was always rewarded, go above and beyond. Raise your hand for anything extra above and beyond going on. And I did all that. And I was devastated that I was not recognized in the way that I should have been. And that has fueled me to let others understand how to be more in control of their own career. Don't be so dependent on the company. When you saw that video, I was wearing a t-shirt that had a C on it. And I said C in the beginning meant company, because I was living for the company, not for myself. I had to take back my life because the C needed to stand for Carter, who I am. And that's the takeaway pertaining to we need to take control of our lives no matter what we're doing, because it's up to us to make it work and up to us to recover when it doesn't work. And I have a framework called the YUPS. And the first piece is set up. It's about shifting your mindset to be ready for whatever the next is. And that may be scary. But you have to step out of your comfort zone to see the growth. The second part of that is show up, meaning you need to start to move in places that you haven't been before. Don't be so afraid to be the only one in the room. Don't be afraid to network in new environments. Ensure that you stay relevant and know what's going on in your industry so that you can add value and be conversational to clients as to where they are struggling and how you can help them. And the third piece is step up. And that is the confidence. Knowing that you are a subject matter expert. What you say is profound. People want you on their team, in their projects. They want to learn from you. And I love talking to people about those aspects. And there is so much embodied in those components. I do individual coaching, group coaching. I love coming into organizations and speaking, talking to employees about what they could be doing differently, how to be empowered to understand how to move their own career, and also enjoy working with people and having them share their voice. I have a summit called Elevate Your Value Summit, where I have individuals, and it's virtually, share their story, because we need to talk about what has happened to us so that everyone else, that person struggling, that person who's in that same situation today, has tools to recover, get back up, and get back up stronger and keep moving the path that God created for them. And I also enjoy empowering people to share their story in a written form. And I mentioned earlier my anthology, Letters to My Corporate Sisters, Stories of Endurance, Elevation, and Encouragement. Myself and 10 other women. This is the inaugural volume. Volume 2, I am working on securing co-authors right now to come out in March 2024, because we need to read the stories of others. We think we live in isolation in our situations. We do not. Women have been brave to tell you what they went through, as painful as it was. But of course, on the other side, we can reflect and share our lessons learned, what to do or not do, what to notice, and speak up about the next time. So I love to be able to empower people in many ways, sharing their stories, working on their communication, helping them elevate their career. I call myself the career elevation strategist or the corporate elevation strategist, because I know if I had me as a sponsor, mentor, coach coming up, I know I'd be a lot further along than where I am, but I am blessed to be where I am today and able to share what I know with others so that they can fulfill their lives and be successful in whatever way they think that is to them. So I thank you, LaWanna, for that time to be able to have a great conversation and talk with your audience.
Thank you so much, Dr. Elizabeth. This has been amazing. To our listening audience, you have heard it here. Several mic drops from Dr. Elizabeth Carter, a dualpreneur. She's speaking from both lanes of experience, and I encourage you, her contact information is below. If you just want to have a conversation to get to know how is she doing it, or if you're in the corporate side having dreams and aspirations about being an entrepreneur, how did she navigate that? How is she still navigating that in an ethical way? Because when we're on the corporate side, there's the ethics component that we have to talk about and deal with. But that's another discussion. But she is definitely a woman on the rise, someone to know. I am delighted that our paths crossed. And to our Black and brown brothers and sisters out there, continue to rise up, celebrate one another, celebrate our voices, network, encourage. I mean, we've got amazing resources among us. Now let's go and then network with others in other communities. We can change the world. We really can. So, Dr. Elizabeth, again, thank you so very much for joining me on another edition of Business and Financial Raw Talk. And to our listening audience, we will see you next week at Tuesday at 6 p.m. And remember always, in life and in business, when your vision intersects with opportunity, success is inevitable. We'll see you next week. Thanks again.